We're going to be talking about why so many of your favorite movies are secretly conservative. Just want to give a shout out to our friends over at Raycon for sponsoring this video. You want the best pair of wireless earbuds on the market? Raycons are the ones.
Hi, I'm John Krasinski, and I'm hosting SNL with Machine Gun Kelly.
Big week, huge week.
But no pressure, though.
You better be funny.
Who doesn't love John Krasinski? It makes sense. There's lots to love about John Krasinski. People love The Office. Everybody loves Jim. And of course, he made a delightful little at-home news show that went viral during the pandemic. He's the type of dude that seems to resonate with Americans of all types. I think one of the reasons why people like him is because of the not-so-obvious conservative values in some of his movies, particularly in A Quiet Place. And that got me thinking about some other Hollywood projects that have some kind of sneaky, under-the-radar conservative qualities that happen to be widely celebrated by the left, unintentionally. I'm going to show you what I mean with a few really recent movies. The endings of these movies are the parts that best exemplify the values. So I'm just warning it out. These are big spoilers for all of the movies we're about to discuss. If you don't want to know what happens, jump ahead to the next film that you've already seen, or jump all the way ahead to the part where I tell you why so many movies generally are conservative, even though they don't mean to be. Let's start with A Quiet Place. A Quiet Place was released to overwhelmingly positive reviews. John DeFore from Hollywood Reporter said, quote, "Scenes of what passes for ordinary life let the screenplay focus on mom and dad's attempts to educate their son and daughter while never letting them forget how dangerous their lives are. One thinks of what we hear from parents of black boys, raising them to be normal and happy, but hyper-vigilant about the way they are perceived by others." That's a pretty wild and deep read right there from the Hollywood Reporter.
This is a black thing, isn't it?
The box office on this movie, enormous. It was a very low-budget film. It made $340 million at the box office, numbers that are not going to be paralleled in the new post-COVID era. For those who haven't seen the movie, there's a family that has to live in silence because there are these mysterious aliens that hunt by sound. So any sound draws the aliens. Knowing that even the slightest whisper or footstep can bring death, Evelyn and Lee, those are the parents, are determined to find a way to protect their kids while desperately searching for a way to fight back. The very beginning of the film, this isn't really a spoiler, it's literally in the first 3 minutes of the film. They have a very young child. They are trying to walk into town to get food in this post-apocalyptic era, and the little kid basically gets eaten by an alien. So now, mom and dad have to decide, are they going to have more kids? And they do. They get pregnant. They decide to have the kid, despite the fact that it puts everybody at risk. There was some flack out there for Emily Blunt's character being with child in a horror apocalyptic setting, but those reactions miss the actual deeply profound nature of the story. The entire concept of the film is rooted in the risk that is going to take place in the last third of the film when mom actually has the baby. This is about the idea that even when you have a pretty good reason not to have a kid, you should still have a kid and take life-altering risk in order to have that kid. So unintentionally, the movie is incredibly pro-life. Okay, but that is not the only mainstream Hollywood film that has received all sorts of critical plaudits and is actually pretty conservative. Hey, how about Soul? So Soul just came out. This is the new Jamie Foxx Pixar movie. The film is about a New York jazz pianist named Joe. He suddenly finds himself trapped in a strange land between Earth and the afterlife when he falls down a manhole and apparently dies. In trying to hold back his own death with whatever it takes, he ends up stumbling into the great before in a magical reinterpretation of life beyond Earth. There is a system where unborn souls exist. These unborn souls have value. They've existed well before childbirth.
This is where new souls get their personalities, quirks, and interests before they go to Earth.
They're given a spark, which is a passion, as the final touch. And then they are placed into human bodies. Life exists both before and after life. And before a child is born, there is life. And before and after people die, there is life. These are extremely religious and conservative concepts. There's no way to watch Soul and go, okay, yeah. And then if you believe that the soul is implanted in the body of the fetus from conception, which presumably is what's happening, that if you believe that's what's happening, that you should go ahead and have an abortion. It's a very pro-life film. People who have made it, I'm not sure realize that, but it just is. Arrival. That's another film that received overwhelmingly positive reviews. Mara Reinstein from US Weekly wrote, "The sci-fi thriller not only subverts expectations in brilliant ways, it explores deeply felt themes of life, loss, and love." The box office on Arrival, $200 million at the box office, 8 Academy Award nominations, and 1 win. So the Academy is very much into wokeness, right? The Academy loves the woke. So why exactly did they love this film? Why did so many people love this film on the left? That makes no sense when you actually look at the theme of the film. So for those who missed it, the film follows a linguistics professor named Louise Banks. She works with the military to communicate with alien life forms after mysterious spacecraft appear around the world. With nations on the verge of global war, Banks and her crew are racing against time to find a way to communicate with the extraterrestrials. It's a really sophisticated and interesting film. Now, during the film, we keep seeing what we think are flashbacks of Louise with her daughter, right? From birth, through a short childhood, and up until her daughter dies at a young age from a fatal disease. And you think that these are flashbacks, that Louise, because she has experienced this pain, she now has the capacity to speak to the aliens in a different way and see the world in a different way. Okay, but that's not actually what happens in the film. Those are flash forwards. That because Louise is communicating with the aliens, and the aliens have the capacity to see into the future, Louise knows throughout the process that she is going to have a child, and that the child is going to die at an early age. And she knows that if she gets together with this other guy working with her, who's played by Jeremy Renner, that she's going to have this kid. This kid is going to live, suffer, and then die. And she decides to go through with it anyway. I have not seen a more pro-life message in any movie, because one of the great themes of the pro-choice movement is life is not worth living if you are going to have a kid who is going to have some sort of terrible disease, or if you know that the kid's life is going to be cut short in any way, or the kid's going to suffer in any way. It's an inherently pro-life film. I mean, this is a mother making the decision to have a child and give the child the gift of life, knowing that suffering for her and her family is going to follow. Pretty pro-life.
If you could see your whole life from start to finish, would you change things?
Okay, finally, the Florida Project. So the Florida Project is not as openly conservative as some of these other films. Now, again, none of the people who made these other films would acknowledge that these films are conservative. They just are. Again, a film with an Academy Award nomination, a Golden Globe nomination, and reviews like this one from Helen O'Hara. Quote, vibrant and brimming with vitality, this is empathic toward its subjects, but fiercely critical of the system that victimizes them. Okay, that's actually not what the movie is about. Director Sean Baker was also behind the transgender film Tangerine, which followed a sex worker on the hunt for his/hers cheating boyfriend, who's also her pimp. So obviously this is not a conservative person. The Florida Project follows a woman named Haley who lives with her 6-year-old daughter Mooney in a motel catered to the Walt Disney World tourists outside Orlando, Florida. Haley survives largely on welfare. She has pretty much no respect for other people, especially people who cross her. She has an attitude she's passed on to Mooney.
I failed as a mother, Mooney. You've disgraced me.
Yeah, Mom, you're a disgrace.
Mooney is mischievous. She influences her friends into tricking strangers into giving her money. She talks back to the adults. She curses. These are all things learned from her mom. And then Willem Dafoe plays the sort of landlord at the motel who ends up trying to act as sort of a quasi-father figure and protect Mooney. The movie is certainly not meant to be a conservative rip on the need for fathers in the home and the need for traditional values and social fabric. But unfortunately for him, that's kind of what the movie is. It may be trying to be a critique of capitalism. It misses. It may be trying to be a critique of how we treat the impoverished in our society. It misses. What the film really is about in the end is how individual bad choices have ramifications for children. And that when you have children, you have to start making better decisions, because when you take all of the social institutions and fabric away from children, their life is essentially over. They're living in a dream world in which they cannot escape the nightmare. Right? This is the movie's basically about the fallout of having kids without fathers in the home. It's about the fallout from not acting well, even if you do have responsibilities to your own child. That when you don't have traditional family values, things fall apart incredibly quickly. The film was well regarded by the critics. Willem Dafoe actually got a nomination for Best Actor at the Golden Globes and the Academy Awards. And the film is good. The film also happens to be a complete referendum on bad behavior by parents who don't think beyond the next 5 seconds. We're talking movies here, and if you want to watch movies with the best sound possible, here's what you need. Raycons. Check these babies out. So, they are beautiful. They come in this nice case. You open them up. You pop them in your ears, and you're ready to go. Boom! Done. Behold the magic. They have now synced. Raycon, disrupting the electronics industry by designing premium wireless audio for half the price without compromise. They're doing things differently than other brands out there, from the way they design the products to the way they price them. Raycon prioritizes customer experience from start to finish. Raycon offers their wireless earbuds in a range of fun colors and patterns. Check these. Look at that. Blue, magical, with a variety of fit options. These ones fit my ear perfectly because I had already pre-fit them. No dangling wires, no stems. I mean, I look amazing. Do I not? You can look just as amazing. The company was co-founded by Ray J, celebrities like Snoop Dogg, Mike Tyson, obsessed with Raycons. I am too, so that's a pretty wide variety right there. Plus, Raycon has a 45-day free return policy. Raycon earbuds give you 6 hours of playtime, seamless Bluetooth pairing, more bass, a more compact design for a comfortable noise-isolating fit. Whether you're taking up that new hobby or you just want to make your day-to-day a little more comfortable, or you want to watch great movies with excellent earbuds, Raycons, those are the perfect way to bring premium audio to everything you do. So, click the link in the description box or go to buyraycon.com/ShapiroYT, buyraycon.com/ShapiroYT to get 15% off your Raycon purchase. There are lots of films that we have not discussed here that have even more openly conservative themes, right? Dark Knight Rises is an obvious one. Lord of the Rings films are very conservative. Death of Stalin is very conservative. I can't believe that any of the people who made those films are actually openly conservative. They're not. So why do filmmakers in Hollywood keep making films with conservative themes that contradict their actual political ideology? And why do liberals in Hollywood keep responding to the conservative themes? Well, here is the thing. When you look at the structure of story is inherently bent toward conservatism. Why? Because it has to contrast virtue with non-virtue. So start with the Aristotelian idea of the tragic hero. The tragic hero, who's a feature in nearly every piece of content for thousands of years, is a person of virtue who has a tragic flaw. The tragic flaw is exploited and the hero falls. The basic idea there is a couple of things. One, you have a person who actually is virtuous, right? There is a difference between acting virtuously and not acting virtuously. Then the hero has a flaw in his virtue. That flaw leads to his downfall because the world is a fair and just place in which flaws, tragic as they may be, end up condemning and consigning people to bad fates. Right? So there are inherent values in story. Okay, more colloquially and more commonly, people in the entertainment industry tend to circulate around The Hero's Journey by Joseph Campbell. He wrote a book called The Hero with a Thousand Faces, in which he laid out what he thought was sort of the mythic structure. And this is present in nearly every film. The one that most famously it is present in is Star Wars. Right? The entire Star Wars Episode 4 is rooted in the hero's journey. There are a bunch of steps along this way that are inherently conservative. Again, in order to have heroes, you have to have villains. In order to have heroes and villains, you have to have values. So the idea of a moral relativism in which there is no right and there is no wrong, and we have to understand every side of the story, and every side of the story inherently is kind of like, that is boring. Nobody's all that interested in it, and it doesn't work on film. Then there is the problem in all storytelling of free will. It turns out that the most boring type of story is one in which you know what is going to happen at the end of the story. And in fact, it is going to happen no matter what the hero does because the hero is not in control. One of the key elements of the hero's journey is that the hero has to take control of his own life, right? He has a hero's journey, a hero's arc, in which he goes from somebody who doesn't want to be involved to somebody who not only is thrust into involvement, but becomes the active participant in his own story. That person is going to have to overcome obstacles. If the obstacles are overcome for him, he's not the hero. If the hero is just faced with a villain, and then the villain collapses because other people from society force that person to back down, the hero is not a hero. The hero is now a passive participant in their own story. Every movie that you see that has a hero overcoming obstacles, that is about a person who is acting with some form of durability and integrity in the world. Okay, these are all conservative values. They do not hold up to left-wing scrutiny. In fact, even the most left-wing films you've seen are built along these lines. Even ones that are overtly left-wing are built along the lines of there is some oppressor who is trying to stop the hero from being free, and now the hero must stand up for himself and or for somebody else. They have to stand up for somebody else. Now, there can be left-wing ideas that are pushed using this sort of conservative formula. You see this in film all the time. But if you're trying to tell an apolitical film, one that is not openly left-wing, very often you'll see these sort of conservative messages seeping in. So to go back to the original examples, if you're looking at A Quiet Place, the challenge of this family is to survive and to propagate to the next generation.
You have to protect them. Promise me. You will protect them.
If mom decided to have an abortion, she and dad are not the heroes anymore. She and dad are just victims of the situation, right? If you go back to Arrival, if the heroine of the story knows that she is going to have a child, the child is going to suffer and die, but she decides not to go through with it, then she's no longer the heroine of the story. She's just somebody who's a victim of circumstance. It is the challenges in life that cause us to rise above the challenges in life, right? That is the power of the myth. That is the power of the story. And to do so with virtue. Right? So all of that has to be upheld in story structure. And that is why you see so many films that are purportedly left-wing that actually are not as left-wing as the creators would want them to be. And if they ever figured this out, then they would be a lot less insulting about conservatism, considering that virtually all of the hallmarks of the films that they make are rooted in conservative ideas about the world, about morality, about decency, and about self-control and free will. I want to know what you guys think. What are some of the other films that you've seen that you think are actually kind of secretly conservative, but the people don't even know they are making conservative films? I know there are a lot of you out there with ideas. Leave them in the comments below. Would love to hear your recommendations. Did you know that every like on this video creates one additional leftist tier? Don't ask me why. That's called science. To take advantage of this amazing opportunity, hit the like button.